Say hello, guys.
And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll
Hi guys. So I decided that I wanted to start making YouTube videos again, and I wanted to document Ethan's milestones and all the things that I go through as mom. I decided what better way to do so than to tell you guys my labor and birth story. So first, on June 27th, I went to my last prenatal group, and they checked my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was a little bit elevated. So they decided that they wanted to see me again the next morning to make sure that I didn't have high blood pressure. So I went back the next morning for my regular checkup, and my blood pressure was normal. That night I started feeling funny and my arm was numb. I felt really dizzy, so I decided to go to the labor and delivery floor of my hospital just to make sure that everything was okay with the baby and I was fine. So I went to the hospital and they told me that everything was normal after monitoring me, and they sent me home. So the next day, I started feeling funny again. My arm started feeling really numb. My vision started going in and out, and I decided that I wanted to go get checked again, because you can never be too sure when you're pregnant. The littlest thing can make the biggest difference. And I decided to go back to the hospital, and they decided to monitor me for a few more hours. When I got there and they hooked me up to the monitors and they checked my vitals, they realized that my blood pressure was a little high. So they decided to keep me for a couple more hours, and they wanted to check me for something called preeclampsia. Seeing that I had high blood pressure, they wanted to make sure that I did not have this. For those of you that do not know what preeclampsia is, it is when your placenta pretty much releases toxins into your body, and it's going against your body versus helping you and the baby. It could harm you and the baby if left untreated, and the only way to stop it or to cure it is through delivery. They wanted to make sure that I didn't have the other symptoms, which were protein in your urine and elevated liver enzymes. When they took the test for the protein in the urine, it came back that I did have protein in my urine, and they decided to keep me for a few more hours where they would reevaluate me just to make sure that my liver enzymes remained normal. And they told me that I had one of two choices. The first choice being that I deliver my son at 34 weeks and I would stay in the hospital until then, but I would have to be transported to a different hospital, seeing that he would come out prematurely. He would have to stay in the NICU, and they didn't have a NICU at the hospital I was supposed to deliver at. And my second choice was that I would go home and I would come back 2 to 3 times a week, and I would deliver at 37 weeks. Which, to me, that was the plan. I wanted him to stay in as long as possible. I did not want a premature baby. I did not know how to care for a premature baby, and I was honestly scared. No one wants to be told that they have to deliver their baby early. I ended up getting the results back, and my liver enzymes were elevated. So they told me that you have no other choice. You are getting transported to a different hospital, and you are going to deliver at 34 weeks. So my boyfriend followed behind me. Nobody had any idea that I was even at the hospital at this point, because it was midnight when I went, so I didn't call anybody. So I called my mother and his mom, and I just told them I'm getting transmitted to a different hospital where I would have to deliver early. And obviously I woke them up out of a sound sleep, so they were completely confused, and they were like, wait, what's going on? I don't understand. So I ended up getting transmitted to another hospital, and they ended up starting me on something called magnesium sulfate to lower my blood pressure. Now, one of the downfalls of magnesium is that you can't eat or drink on it. They do give you like an IV drip, but you are on a liquid diet, so the only thing that you're allowed to eat is Italian ices, and when they rush it into your body starts feeling really warm, you get nauseous, which I hated. So I had to grab him because he's teething, so he is like on a whole nother level of whiny. Like, he has not stopped crying for like the last 3 days since he started teething. Say hi. Hello. So once they start you on the magnesium sulfate and your body adjusts to it, you're fine. Like, you do feel like a little bit funny, but it's nothing compared to when they actually start you on it. So fast forward 3 days, my boyfriend ended up having to go home because he had work the next morning, and although I was in the hospital, we did still need to maintain a household, and I did need him to go back to work. He already took his vacation the week prior for my baby shower. One of the perks of being a mom is that you can't control when your child spits up on you. Huh. Okay. So, where was I? So my boyfriend ended up going home, and that night the OB came in and they told me that I had to be induced that night because my liver enzymes were triple the amount that they were supposed to be, and it was unsafe for me to go any further in the pregnancy. I didn't realize how bad it was. I kind of thought that he was just making me deliver. I don't even know what was going through my mind, honestly. It didn't make any sense to me. Like, I was perfectly healthy, and then all of a sudden he just comes in and he's like, okay, well, you're delivering this baby right now. Once I checked to see how elevated my levels were, it kind of made sense. The normal range is between 6 and 34, and my levels were at 116. So it did make sense why he wanted to induce me right then and there. But still, I was only 33 weeks, and it was still very scary, seeing that now I'm delivering even earlier than what was expected. But I already got the shot to develop his lungs, so it was pretty much more harm keeping him in at this point. So then we decided to, well, I didn't really have a choice, actually. He decided to induce me, and I had no one there, so I called my mom and my sister. They were able to make it up in time, and my boyfriend, seeing that he's a heavy sleeper, he was able to make it up there, but I was already being induced, so he had to wait in the hallway just for the time being. My sister did stay in the room with me. So the first thing that they decided to start me on was something called a balloon catheter. Now, the balloon catheter is it's literally a balloon with a string, and they insert it into your cervix. It's probably like 1 centimeter, and once it's in your cervix, they inflate it to however many centimeters they want you to be at. So for me, it was 4 centimeters. However, my cervix was closed and hard, so they had to use a tool to open up my cervix to at least 1 centimeter, which, let me tell you, was the absolute worst pain I've ever felt. It was way worse than pushing him out. It was worse than the contractions. It was like the worst pain I've ever felt. So they ended up getting the balloon in, and we pretty much played the waiting game. So 17 hours later, they checked me again, and I still was not dilated to the 4 centimeters. So they decided to just start me on the Pitocin, and hopefully soon they would be able to take that balloon catheter out. So my contractions were 1 minute apart, and I was only 4 centimeters dilated. Which normally when you are in labor and you're 1 centimeter apart, I'm sure like your cervix is probably like 7 or 8 centimeters dilated, so you're like about ready to push. But for me, that was not the case. So the doctor told me that I would pretty much, she couldn't do anything. At this point, Ethan started not taking most of the contractions, and his heart rate started to drop, and they kept having to turn me over from my left to my right side. in order to get him off of his umbilical cord. They told me that I had a few hours to deliver him or they would have to take me in for a C-section. The contractions ended up getting so bad at this point that I asked them to give me the epidural because I no longer wanted to feel his pain, and I thought maybe it would help him by taking less stress off of him with the contractions. So I was then finally able to get a couple hours of sleep in, and at 4:30 a.m. on Friday, I woke up to a gush of water, which was my water breaking. So the doctor came in and checked me, and I was still only at 6 centimeters dilated. They told me to hold off and that they would come in to check me a couple hours later. So they ended up coming back like maybe 30 minutes. I paged them to come back, and when they checked me, I was now at 9 centimeters and I was almost ready to push. So this is what I've been dealing with for the last 3 days. It has been nonstop with him crying, with him gagging. If anybody has any advice what to do with a teething baby, please feel free to message me on any of my social media and help me. Help, huh? I have tried literally everything. I have given him like the teething pods, I have given him Tylenol, I've let him chew on cold teething toys, and nothing is working at all. And on top of it, like, he just keeps spitting up because he's sticking his hands in his mouth. Huh. So the OB that was checking me, he was a male, and I don't know if this makes any sense at all, but when you're in labor, the littlest things count, or the littlest things matter, even if they don't really matter. For example, I felt like his fingers were going to be bigger than if a girl checked me. So when he was checking me and he was like, okay, well, you're only 9 centimeters. And I thought like, okay, if somebody else checked me, maybe I would be at 10, because that whole centimeter like matters when you're in labor. So I ended up having another doctor check me, and she in fact told me I was at 10 centimeters and that they would be wheeling me into the OR where I would be delivering my son. I was able to have a vaginal delivery, but because I was at such high risk and the OR was the closest place in the hospital to the NICU where he would be immediately transported to, that was the safest place to deliver him. So they needed my boyfriend to gear up, and since he was the only one allowed in the room at that time, he put on like everything you would put on if you were to go for a C-section, and followed behind us while we went down to the OR. Now, when we got into the OR, there was like so many doctors, like the entire room was filled with doctors. So he would have to stay by my head, and as soon as we went into the OR, I started to push. I only pushed for about 10 minutes, and then came out a beautiful, small, little miracle 3-pound, 10-ounce baby. They transported him up to the NICU, and I went back to my labor room, and they started me on breast pumping while they got him all situated upstairs. And as soon as I was inside of my postpartum room, they were going to wheel me up so that way I could see him. He was really healthy for the fact that he came out 7 weeks early. He did need an IV for sugar in his belly button, which only stayed in for about 5 days, and he needed a feeding tube because when a baby comes out, or when a baby is inside of you, certain weeks they learn to do certain things. Now, because he came out at 33 weeks and he wouldn't learn to eat or breathe and suck and swallow at the same time, I ended up needing to put him on the feeding tube until he was at least 34 to 35 weeks, and he would be able to learn to do all of that on his own. Because he was so early. They told me that there was a chance that he could stay in the NICU up until his due date, which was 7 weeks away. He was only there for 24 days. I don't know if I would have been able to do the whole 7 weeks. My boyfriend, his dad, was out of work the entire month, so that way he can take me up there and back, seeing that I was still on blood pressure meds, which were unsafe to drive on, so I wasn't able to get up there by myself, and I did need to transport milk. So thank you for listening to my labor and delivery story. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me on social media, or you can comment below. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
And on we'll go.